Dobrodošli vsi, ki ste se udeležili današnjega webinarja z naslovom Od izolacije k vključevanju otrok z intelektualno oviranostjo. Z nami je gospod Bisser Spirov iz organizacije Lumos. Preden začnemo, bi vas še povabila tudi na naslednje webinarje, s katerimi bomo nadaljevali v jeseni. Povem tudi, da Investicijo Centra za usmerjanje deinstitucionalizacije v okviru poteka ta spletni seminar, sofinancirata Evropska Unija iz programa evropske kohezijske politike in Republika Slovenija. Še nekaj tehničnih podatkov. Obveščamo vas, da se dogodek snema in posnetek je tudi vedno na voljo na spletni strani. Kdor potrebuje prevod, najde v pravilni vrstici spodaj ikono v obliki globusa. Na voljo imamo 3 možnosti. Če ničesar ne spremenite, poslušate pogovor brez tolmačenja. Če označite kanal za slovenščino, poslušate vse v slovenskem jeziku. In če izberete kanal za angleščino, poslušate vse v angleškem jeziku. Zdaj pa z veseljem pozdravljamo današnjega govorca, gospoda Bisserja Spirova, višjega tehničnega svetovalca pri mednarodni organizaciji Lumos Foundation. Gospod Spirov deluje na področju otroškega varstva že več kot 3 desetletja. Ključno je prispeval k reformam sistema socialnega varstva v Bolgariji, še posebej na področju deinstitucionalizacije otrok z intelektualno oviranostjo. Od leta 2010 v okviru organizacije Lumos svetuje in podpira ekipe v različnih državah, kot so Ukrajina, Kenija, Kolumbija in Moldavija, kjer skupaj z lokalnimi partnerji razvijajo storitve, ki otrokom omogočajo odraščanje v družinah in skupnostih izven ustanov. Predlagam, da kar nadaljujemo z predstavitvijo gospoda Spirova.
Hello everybody. It's nice to be here today on this important seminar. The topic of my presentation today is from isolation to inclusion, or subtopic more precisely is about transitioning from institutional care to community-based services for children with disabilities. This is not just a technical issue, technical subject. It is deeply human one because we are speaking about children who have been historically excluded, isolated, and placed in institutions often far from their families and communities. Unfortunately, some of them spent all their life from birth in such institutions without proper therapy and social stimulation, especially when we are talking for children with disabilities. Many of these children, again, especially those with disabilities with more profound and multiple disabilities, have been denied the love, care, and opportunity to develop their full potential. But I choose this topic because it is very important for me. It's about lives of all these children. Even more, it's about changing the lives. It's about ensuring that children with disabilities grow up with dignity, with access to education, health care, play, communication, just like any other child. And last but not least, this is about the right. So inclusion is not a wish, it's a right. Inclusion means recognizing the right of every child to be part of family and in community. And this is very important because this not depends from the child itself. It depends from us, from adults, from professionals who are working with these children, because we have to build systems that make this possible, recognition of their rights. Before to dive into today's topic, I'd like to share a few words about Lumos. Lumos is an international organization founded by J.K. Rowling, with the mission to ensure that all children grow up in safe and caring families, not in institutions. We believe, we truly believe actually, that every child has the right to a family, to be loved, to receive the support they need within their family and their community. But Lumos is not a service provider. We are not working directly with children. We are working with authorities, decision makers, stakeholders, professionals who provide services for children, because our aim is to support transformation of the child care system and protection in a way that this system responds more adequately to the real needs of children and families. I told you that the founder of Lumos is J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, and I like very much this quote from her that I'm sharing. Imagine a world where every child is raised in a loving family with the resources they need to thrive. So actually, we are talking about vision of a world where no child is left behind, where every child, including children with disabilities, has access to love, care and support in their very important formative years. And I just want to spend a few minutes about the importance of these formative years, because this is really very important for every child, and for children with disabilities is even more important. So these first years, some people say 2, some people say 3 years, 1,000 days or 900 days, it doesn't matter, but the first year of life are not simply stage of child development. They are the foundation of who we become, who child become. And in this year, the child learns and answer 3 very basic paramount questions. Am I safe? Am I loved? Do I matter? And again, these years and the answer of this question is very important for every child, but for children with disability, especially those with profound and multiple disabilities, the impact is even more critical, because they are children who often cannot ask for what they need. Children whose development is more, how to say, more fragile. Children who rely even more on human presence, touch, rhythm, warmth, routine, and joy. And again, it is very important for all children, but unfortunately there is a very wrong and even dangerous myth that children with disabilities do not notice, do not feel, or do not need what other children need. But there is more than 78 years of researches, evidence-based information, studies, analysis. They show that children with disabilities notice everything, and the absence of love, connection, and stimulation could leave very deep wounds in their being, their human being, their soul. So let's see what science say, what is proved by the science, by evidence, what means safe for one child. How the child know that I am safe. Safety actually is built through consistent care, soothing touch, and predictable routines. And if a surrounding of the child is full with consistent care, soothing touch, and predictable routines, child learns that he or she is safe. What about love? How the child knows that he or she is loved. It's a feeling, but the love is felt through eye contact, warm voices, emotional connections, emotional attitude, emotional relations. And if you love the child, but you don't make eye contact, don't have warm voices and emotional connection, actually you love the child, but child doesn't have the feeling that he is loved. And it's the same with the last very important question: do I matter? I have to be seen, to be heard, responded to, and all this creates sense of self-esteem, self-worth, and it shapes identity and support communication and connection. So what I'm trying to say, that evidence is very clear that all this depends very much from the surrounding of the child, the people around the child, environment around the child. And sometimes this environment could be very stimulating for child's development, and sometimes this environment could be not very stimulating, even to violate the possible potentials of the child for his or her future development. So every child, regardless of ability or disability, needs the same things: to be seen, to be soothed, to feel safe, and to be supported in their unique journey. And of course, now let's imagine for a moment the opposite situation. Imagine a child with disability spending first early formative years in some institutions. Is there consistent care there? Is there soothing touch, predictable routines? Are people establish eye contact, warm voices? Do they have emotional connection, understandable for small child with disability? Usually, child is lying in a cot, seeing different faces every day, having no one who truly knows their needs, their rhythms, their way of saying yes or no. And this is not just lost opportunity, it's a violation of their potential for development. And we know that reality, unfortunately, is that too many children around the world still live in institutions. And when we are talking for children with disabilities, especially with more severe, more multiple and profound disabilities, their institutionalization is very, very harmful. Mainly, there are few reasons about this, but mainly one of the important reasons is that in institutions, caregivers are often responsible for too many children, and for them it's difficult to provide and to establish personalized contact and care, and to establish strong emotional bonds with every child. And we know from the science that this can lead to feelings of neglect and even to hinder emotional development of the child. Also from science we know that children in institution often experience delayed cognitive and emotional and social development, but not because of disabilities, but because of limited social interaction, fewer learning opportunities, and lack of stimulation. Because institutional routines, institutional life can be restrictive, very restrictive sometimes, and preventing children from exploring and learning independently. Again, last 78 years, there are plenty of research showing that institutions are harmful for children. And the main question is why they still exist, and not only exist, but in some places the institutional care is prevailing. In some places is the only option. And here I want to emphasize that we always have to keep in mind that institutions for children or for people generally have very long history in human society, and because of this they are often viewed as an inevitable part of social structures, especially when it comes to caring for vulnerable groups like children with disabilities, adults with disabilities, children with challenging behavior, etc. It is very difficult to know when the first institutions were established, but there is some researches indicating that the first institution was created 1200 years ago. And since then, institutional care has been widely recognized and in some places still is seen as the primary solution for vulnerable children. For centuries, it was assumed that such settings, specialized institutions, provide protection and good care, and this historical legacy has created a deeply embedded perception that institutional care is a necessary, inevitable part of society. And as a result, people see this institution as a natural thing. But actually this is not natural. This was created by people. This is just a system to take care for vulnerable children. This was created by people with best intention, and now people may create another system of care based on services to support children to live in families and communities and not to live in institutions. But achieving this complicated social transformation, moving from institutional care to family-based and community-based services, is not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens quickly. And in Lumos, we have developed a comprehensive framework with 11 key components. You see advocacy, communication, situational analysis, design of services, allocation of resources, workforce development, partnership, and so on. We know that this is not optional steps, and only when all these components are addressed together as a whole, we can achieve an effective and sustainable transformation. And of course, it takes time. It requires vision, leadership, resources, coordinations, decision at the highest level. Sometimes ministries will need to change legal bylaws, regulatory change is necessary to develop new services, to support families and communities, etc. But there is something very important. While all this big reform is planned, debated, and implemented, there are children today who continue to live in institutions. Children who cannot wait for the reform to take full shape because their life is happening now. And that is why. So these children are in the institution and they are suffering from the harmful effect of this institution. It is again evidence-based that institutions, especially for children with disabilities, could be harmful for their development. And that is why, in parallel with all the systematic work for the reform of the system, we must act immediately. Every one of us who is working with children, the staff of institutions where children with disabilities are living, management of these institutions, NGO, and other professionals, we all have to act immediately to improve the life of these children, to make more human environment with more communication, more light, more colorful, with stimulation and social contacts. And believe me, this is not very difficult. This is not very difficult to make this change in reality. Actually, there are three main fields that can be improved relatively quickly, and depends mainly, again, from the staff working with children who are currently placed in institutions. And the first one is to change the environment. One of the most serious problems faced by children with disabilities living in institutions is the nature of the environment itself, because usually these are typically not stimulating, sometimes rigid settings that fail to provide individualized care and attention, are not able to provide enough warm or meaningful interaction and communication, and actually the needs of individual child are too often lost in the routine of institutional culture. So if you who are working with children in institution are able to make environment more stimulating, more curious, environment that encourages learning and support emotional growth and communication of these children, this is already very significant step in improving the life and well-being of these children. The other very important field, which is one of the most serious problem, relates with difficulties with communication and comprehension of these children. I was visiting many institutions for children with disabilities in Bulgaria, but abroad also. And every time I ask the staff one and the same question: show me what kind of comprehensive assessment tool you are using here to know the level of understanding of children, of every child. I never received a tool like this. Even that tools for assessment of level of understanding of the child exist in many universities, but they are never or very rarely used in institutions. But if you don't know the level of understanding, how you will communicate with this child? If the child doesn't understand the words and you are talking to him, what does that mean? It means that there is no communication because child doesn't understand the words. And children who are non-verbal or have limited verbal skills, they are in institution very often left without any form of alternative or augmentative communication. Even simple and very effective tools like pictogram, visual symbols, photographs sometimes are very rarely used, even though they can significantly reduce frustration and promote connection, because the research and evidence show that lack of communication is one of the big triggers for challenging behavior when we are talking for children with disabilities. So, if you, and this is possible to be happen right now, tomorrow, if you go and work with these children, try to understand that communication is more than speaking, but it is very important for well-being of the child. And it's about to being understood, how we know their needs, their fears, and how they know what we are insist for them, what they have to do. And this is really very important part of the work that has to be done to improve the life of children currently placed in institutions. Third, last but not least, this is very critical and in the same time very often underestimated, overlooked issue about sensory processing difficulties and issues. Because regardless of diagnosis, different diagnoses, very big number of children with disabilities struggle with sensory integration difficulties. They might be overstimulated or understimulated by their environment, which can lead to increased anxiety, withdrawal, or starting challenging behavior. And in fact, research also show that significant percentage of this form of challenging behavior, harming, self-harming, aggressive, crying, it's linked to unmet sensory needs and again lack of communication. So this is very important. And if I have to summarize what has to be done, and it takes not so much time as a big reform of the society, is to ensure that every child receives an individualized assessment of their comprehension and communication needs, and based on this assessment, to introduce consistently use of alternative and augmentative communication tools. And the second one is to improve the sensory environment, providing stimulation and comfort according to each child's needs, which is a big challenge when we are talking for institutional setting, because institutional settings are created in a way that it's more focused on a group than on individuals. and sometimes it's very difficult to introduce individual approaches in institutional settings. However, the most important, to ensure more meaningful communication and interaction, to treat every child as a unique person, which behavior is a form of expression, even challenging behavior, not something to be ignored or controlled. Maybe it sounds very theoretically, and that's why let me give you one example of what we did in Bulgaria. Let me take you to Bulgaria. I don't know how many of you visited Bulgaria. In North Sea part of Bulgaria, Dobrich region, there is actually one very isolated, not small, but isolated, difficult to reach from main town, village, isolated village, and in this village, strangely, there was one of the biggest institutions for children and young people with disabilities, and when I say biggest, there were 80, 85, sometimes 90 children and young people with profound and multiple disabilities. This home in the village Krushari is closed now. All children and young people were moved in alternative places. There is, on our website, Lumos website, there is small documentary about closing Krushari institution, but it's very small, and it's not possible to cover what has been done in this institution before children to be moved, just to improve their well-being. But I want to share this because just from the first moment when we start working there, we realized that these children are not just children with disabilities, they were children deprived of human connection. And because of this, they were suffering not only from cognitive or physical challenges and disabilities, but from deep social and emotional neglect. And I told you that Lumos is not a provider. We start to work with the staff, with the management, with municipality authorities to support the staff and to support the staff because we believe that every change is starting with people who are working with the children. All the plans, all the good strategy actually coming through the people who are currently working with children institutions. And we train the staff, encourage the staff to see children not only through the lens of their disability, but as individuals with needs, preferences, personalities, rights to communicate and to connection. And really, I want to share this experience because from one side, this is not very difficult things to be implemented in institutional setting. From the other side, the impact to children is very positive, even for children with challenging behavior and multiple disabilities. So, most of the things which I will share now relates with these three main fields which I presented in the previous slide. But what we did together with the staff, we started to introduce daily social activities, very simple one, like storytelling, some meaningful plays, meaningful activities during the day. And this is because children with disabilities in institution often spend hours, sometimes whole day, without stimulating or engagement in institutional setting. There is no communication, there is no very much stimulation. And to counter this, we encourage the staff to integrate simple activities. Let me give you some examples. Imagine a morning circle. So the institution, the children institution have special time in the morning circle. Then there was some meaningful activities with music sometimes, with gentle clapping, depends of the level of disability. With some children was possible to have some conversation, but this was like ritual. We also created a story corner where in part of the institution, of the big dining room, with objects where some tales were told to children, or reading a book, with toys when children could play, with some sensory games in this corner. Few children on a average same level of development uh, organize some activities during the day, small group activities, even for children with more severe disabilities who were not able to participate in these activities, but even just being sitting side by side help them build tolerance for social presence, etc. And this change of the daily life, daily activities, actually bring as a result, as a long-term result, some more meaningful spending of the day. And in addition, this make a positive change to some of the behavior of the children placed there. Individual routines, to establish individual routines about each child is very challenging task when we are talking for institutions, because again there are many children, not many staff, and it is difficult. The logic of the institution is that they are built to group children and not individual, but more group work is important, is possible to be done. However, we tried as much as possible to do this, and the focus were the most difficult children, children with challenging behavior, children with aggressive behavior, with multiple disabilities, to try to establish flexible daily routines which are tailored to each child's rhythm and sensitivity. And let me give you some example also here. There was a child sensitive to sound and became with very aggressive and challenging behavior. And slowly we start to introduce daily routine, quiet morning time with tactile materials before joining others late. Also, the boy loves soft fabrics, and we created some, how to say, blanket corner where he began and ended the day. Very simple things, but believe me, after few months, his challenging behavior reduced, because this daily routine, in accordance with the needs and peculiarities of the child, is very important, because this gave somehow to the child predictability and a sense of control in their environment. Something which many of these children had never experienced. And just ask for yourself, do you control your environment? And how important is this for you? To have a sense of control, not 100% of course, but we all have some control of our environment. And this brings a sense of security and safe. And this is very important when we are talking for difficult children with a challenging behavior. Participation, very, very important, because we work with the staff of this home. We train the staff to engage with children, not just provide care for them, but to provide care with them. And this principle of participation, not for the children, but with the children, is very important, because usually institutional care focuses on tasks, different tasks per one day. We have to prepare lunch, to clean, children have to go out, children have to come back. And see, everything is done to children. If we are talking for children with more severe disabilities, we have to feed them, another task. We have to change the diapers, another task. We have to dressing them, another task. And again, everything is done to children. What we are trying to emphasize, that interaction with the child during the care actually turn everything, everyday task, into a relationship building opportunity. So doing with the child, not just for the child, is a very powerful approach. One key adult is another very big challenge in, as individual routines to establish, but it's not impossible. Maybe not for all children, but it is possible because rotating anonymous caregivers actually cause distress and mistrust in all children. But when we are talking for children with disabilities, when their cognitive development probably is not going according to their calendar age, real age, this is even more frustrating and mistrusting. So children need trusted adults who sees and knows them daily, and this is essential for attachment and emotional regulation. And of course, it is not possible for 70 children to have one key adult. But again, our focus was children with difficult behavior, with challenging behavior, and with severe multiple disabilities. And what we did, which was something like compromise, that each caregiver was assigned to 2-3 children, and this is more than nothing, because this person, this caregiver, has every time to find time to talk with these children, to have some communication, to have some meaningful activities, to have some talks if the child is able to talk, to just to communicate and to make a relation and bond with this child. And last but not least, children institutions are often completely disconnected from the outside world. And when we are talking for children with disabilities, this is a very big problem, because they don't know what is mean to live out of institution, what is the meaning to live in community. And what we try to train and to support the staff and insist to change the way of working with these children is to bring normal everyday life, everyday experience into the home, into the lives of these children. And some simple examples could be some walks outside, but not just to walk. Let's go outside and walk. Go together with him, or this walk has to have a purpose. Let's go to the village. Let's go to visit the shop with caregiver, with this key person, even just to look at the shelves, or just to hear local sounds, to see other people and other people to see them. I don't know how it's in Slovenia, but in Bulgaria, all these children and young people, they have social benefit, something like pension, finance, and some of them were able even to buy very small things with their own money, which was the first experience for them, to use the money to buy something. Of course, some of them don't know what to buy exactly, and that's why I'm saying for this meaningful communication and these activities to be supported from an adult, a caregiver, who is teaching them what to do and how to do. If I had, so this was just example, and I have to tell you that we don't have time now, but we analyzed very carefully all this, and we saw a change on the behavior of children just because of these simple things. I told you, challenging behavior decreased, new behavior appear, like wish of contact, gazing the eyes, interesting of what's happened around them. So there are a lot of positive outcomes for children. And if I have to summarize into 3 lessons learned for this webinar, I would say that the first and maybe the most important one is the change of the daily life, daily routine, because this is the most powerful therapy. And I'm not saying that the therapy itself, like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, psychologist, is not important. It is very important for these children, but actually the real change comes from ordinary moments daily life which is meaningful. And as I told you, this is the most powerful change. Environment in which children living to be more stimulating, fun, to walk outside, to participate in decision according to the level of their development. So because in some decision they will not be able to participate, but some simple decision, for example, what do you want? Do you want to go out, or do you want to stay here? Do you want to dress jacket, or do you want to go with a t-shirt? A simple decision which again every one of us is making. I'm sure that till now, half of the day, every one of us is made, I don't know, hundreds of decisions. We decide ourselves. And this is very important skills with children with disabilities living in institutions. They are not learned, they never live in an environment which provoke to make choices. So a lesson here is that everyday life even can support the children if it includes choice, participation, and respect. The other very important lesson is about this individual knowledge about the child, individual relationships, individual knowledge, individual assessment. Because real change begins when staff start, people who work with this child move beyond labels like profound disability, autism, and start truly observe and understand each child as a person, their sensory profile, reactions, preferences, likes, dislikes, etc. And third, last but not least, that behavior is a message, not a problem. And here I want to talk for something very, I see that the time is running very quickly, and I want to cover one very important concerning issue that we must confront, every one of us working with children with disabilities. And I'm talking about harmful practices such as seclusion, restraint, and other forms of restrictive intervention. Probably you know very well, and you heard a lot about this, but I want just to remind you that children with disabilities are many more times more likely to be institutionalized than children without disabilities. And when they are institutionalized, the devil's circle is starting, because mortality rates of children with disabilities in institution is higher when we compare with mortality rate of children with disabilities living in families. In institutions, they are more likely to be subject to physical violence, emotional abuse, and this kind of practice, restraint, seclusion. In some places, 90% of very severe incidents are with children with disabilities in schools, institutions, special hospitals, etc. And strangely, but this practices is very often justified by myths and misunderstanding, and that's why this will be my last part of the presentation. I want to go to each of these myths. Let's start with the first one. Restraint is necessary for safety. And you know, when I say myth, I mean something which is something like belief or idea. Many people believe that this is true, even though that there is no any evidence and facts showing that this is true. So restraint is necessary for safety of the child. But let's be honest, which necessary we are talking about? Because in reality, when a child is physically restrained, their sense of safety just disappear. They feel fear, confusion, often panic. So it's not safety. Another very popular myth is that children with profound disabilities don't feel or understand restraint. But there is plenty of research showing that children, even children with profound disabilities, feel pain, fear, and distress. Even they cannot verbally express it. And again, restraint causes trauma and harm. It doesn't matter the abilities of child to communicate. The other very popular myth is that seclusion is necessary to calm down children with profound disabilities. But this is coming from some misunderstanding of what children with profound disabilities need, because seclusion doesn't calm them, it isolates them. And many of these children can make sense of why they are suddenly alone, locked in, or left without support. Another popular myth is that keeping children with complex needs confined prevents injury, and this is very widespread myth. And at first glance, this may sound logical. Restrict movement to prevent harm. And maybe in some very, very, very severe cases, this could be used as a last resort, but only for certain period of time. But again, the reality is that confinement often increases distress, risk of self-harm even. So children with complex needs are not safe when confined. They are more frightened, disoriented, disconnected, and they may not understand why they are being restricted. So much more better practices and approaches is to understand the child, to understand their sensory abilities, their level of communication, and this in long term could result in decrease of challenging behavior. And last myth, very popular, is that children with severe disabilities cannot live in the community, but actually there are a lot of examples in many countries that children with profound and multiple disabilities, they really need high level of care and support, but it doesn't mean that they not be separated from family. There is no need to be separated from family, love, and everyday life. I had 2 more slides, but I see that the time is running out very quickly, and I will stop here, and we'll be happy to answer of some of your questions if you have, or to hear your feedback and comments. I will stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much. This was great. I think we came to the end to our meeting. Hvala tudi vsem, ki ste nas poslušali, ki ste vztrajali do konca. Vidimo se spet jeseni in hvala za redne udeležbe. Lep pozdrav.